Okay, I will call the work session to order, I suppose. Welcome everybody to our Williamsport City Council Budget Work Session #1. It's Monday, November 13th, 2023. We're in Trade Transit Center 2, 3rd floor. There's no formalities or anything on the agenda, so we can just jump right into it. So the purpose of this is to really just take a deep dive, have an opportunity to kind of go through the budget that was delivered to us from the administration, ask questions so we understand it in preparation for our formal votes that we'll be taking on the budget ordinances in the 2 meetings in December. Mayor Slaughter, if you want to, I'll give you the opportunity to kick it off. And then what I think we'll do is we'll just go right down through the order as it is and see where the evening takes us. Mayor Slaughter, the floor is yours. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council and administration. As you said, before you have the proposed 2024 budget, which includes the 2022 unaudited figures, as well as the 2023 projections and the 2024 proposed budget. It is anticipated that the city will end 2023 approximately $1.4 million over its estimated general fund revenue budget. And this is significantly due to the strong earned income and business tax performance, as well as strong investment income performance. The general fund expenses are projected to come in on budget if general fund tax revenues are realized as anticipated in accordance with the administrative code change, which was adopted by City Council during the 2023 budget process. Approximately $906,000 will be transferred to the emergency reserve fund. As you probably remember, it was created last year, so anything above the taxes that was budgeted gets transferred into there. And this will leave the city's 2024 budget with a beginning anticipated cash balance in the general fund of $3.8 million. And again, coming in strong, I have to give kudos to Mr. Kevin Mackey. He's doing a great job over there with the tax collection, which we realized a lot of increase there. The 2024 budget also includes a $1 million proposed tax increase, resulting in approximately $800,000 in additional real estate tax revenues. Excluding one-time revenues from the 2024 budget will result in a $3 million deficit. However, the American Rescue Plan Act transfers of approximately $2 million and $237,000 from funds available from prior ballpark activities reduce the budget deficit to approximately $800,000. Without these one-time revenues, 2024 budgeted revenues increased from the prior year. Expenditures are going down. And then the real estate tax increase has been included. Since 2019, the city has been responsible for the debt service, which had been funded previously by RVT in the past, an amount of approximately $800,000 per year, which again equates to approximately that $1 million that now we are responsible for, that $800,000 in debt service. So also included in the 2024 budget are 2 additional positions. One is a grant administrator and assistant general manager of public works. As we previously discussed, the third-class city code limits the city's options to increase revenues, as we all know. And therefore, we have included the grant administrator to seek grant funding opportunities and monitor and maintain grant compliance in-house, which we believe will help subsidize at least part of the general fund budget. So in conclusion, really, it's a good thing. Revenues are up, expenditures are down, but we still have room to make up. So as always, budgeting is never easy, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversations over the next month or so.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Just dive right into it if everybody's ready. So first item on the agenda for item 1 budget review is our income estimates. I'm guessing a combination of Ms. Jacoby, Kevin Mackey potentially supporting that. Maybe not. I could be wrong. Welcome this evening. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Yoder, Vice President Katz, Council. So one thing I want to point out before we get started here, as from last year, the format to your booklets have changed. We have added a summary page before all the budget information, just to kind of highlight the important information in the budget, point it out, to make everything a little bit easier. And these pages will be what the department managers will be discussing during their overview of their budgets. So with that said, moving to the income section, which is on page 5. Doesn't look good. The revenues look like they're down 12%. However, that if you take out the transfer section from these numbers, the revenue is actually projected to increase by 7%. Looking at the business privilege and the wage tax, they are both projected to increase for 2024. As the mayor stated, this is in large part due to the strong collection efforts by Kevin for the delinquent and the current taxes. Looking at the transfer section, your one-time transfer in for the ARPA funds, the ARPA interest, and also the non-revenue for the ballpark.
Any kind of questions on the revenue side, Ms. Mealy?
That non-revenue for the ballpark is obviously this year only, right?
Actually, I think it's a one-time transfer.
One
in.
time. So yeah, we're taking it out of the non-revenue fund, moving it into the general fund, and it's not going to be there next year. Got it. Thanks.
Any other questions from other members? Okay. Good to go on the income side? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next section is general government, and I can kind of handle the city council, city clerk sections here. And let me find my pages here. Yeah. Page 10 and 11. So if you look at the summary tab, one of the big changes is really a decrease on city council's budget. The premium has decreased on health insurance. For the city clerk's perspective, there's a proposed 3% increase for at-will employees for Janice. And then there's a decrease in city hall operating allocation, the essentially rent we're paying, from what I can tell here. So there's a little bit of a general net decrease here. When you go on page 11, under city council's budget individually, realistically, everything is in line with essentially previous last year specifically. So salaries are in line with what they were last year. That change does not take effect until 2026, right? If my numbers are correct. And then, you know, all the other line items are pretty much in line, carrying another 75,000 for legislative contingency in case we as council run into anything. And then when you look at the city clerk's budget here, aside from the changes outlined before, everything is generally in line with previous. The one thing that I did add, I carried $500 for equipment. She had requested a like an ergonomic stand-up desk. We should easily be able to find something with her set up within that. I'm thinking, but I could be wrong. So carry that. That's what that's for. That's really the only other big change. Any questions on council or city clerk's budget? Mr. Mackey.
Not a question, but, and again, this is just kind of thinking about the conversations we've been having about someone to run the meetings. I don't know if we're going to want to factor that in here somewhere, depending on where we land on that discussion, but I don't know if we'll have a determination on that by the time we're done here.
Yeah,
Again,
it's certainly, Yep, go ahead, sorry.
No, I just don't know if we'll have an answer to that question, but I think that it's something we need to account for.
Yeah, certainly. Since we put this together September timeframe, that's something that popped up that we'll have to consider, I think, as we go through the budget sessions and figuring out where we're gonna go. That's a line item I think we might have to add, certainly. So we'll have to see where we're gonna pull that from, all that kind of stuff, but very point well taken, Mr. Mackey. Any other questions on council or the city clerk budget? Okay. Next up is the mayor's office.
Yes, good evening. Once again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration, the mayor's office. So again, as Heather alluded to, we have now the cover pages. So you'll see that the mayor's office actually decreased by 0.47%, which is a decrease of $1,342. Obviously, the mayor's salary is set by ordinance, which council did earlier this year. And then the same 3% proposed for the executive assistant for at-will employees. And then the major decrease in savings was due to this year, we had new computers budgeted, which we purchased for the mayor's office, myself and the executive assistant, that clearly we won't need to purchase in 2024. So those are the two main items. As far as mine.
Any comments or questions for the mayor's office proposed budget? Okay, Mayor Slaughter, thank you very much. Next is the Bureau of Law, and I guess I can kind of technically talk about that if I can find it here. Because it's technically a department of city council. And I'm missing where that's at. 22. So, no massive change. It looks like the budget itself is in line with what it was last year. Cost wise, it looks like we're going to come in under what we budgeted, it appears. I know a couple years ago, we kind of switched how we were planning to pay for that. I think over the or hourly rather than just a lump sum, and it appears that that's been a fruitful strategy from what I can tell. This being our fourth budget session here together, our fourth year of budget sessions here working together. Any questions on the Bureau of Law? Only question I have, Mayor, I believe this contracts run out next year. Are we planning to re-RFP those? Okay. Yeah. No worries.
Yes, I believe since, work with city council to see what we want to do collectively, but I'm fine with putting it back out to RFP again.
Yeah. I don't know what the other members of council think. I think that would be a fruitful idea. We've got two good solicitors, don't get me wrong, but it's been 4 years, a lot's changed in the past 4 years. I don't think it's a bad thing to validate that by any means. So, Ms. Mealy.
Yeah, I think clearly, especially since the separation with from RBTA, it would be wise to reevaluate all of our kind of legal, everything that we've been doing legally, because that dramatically affected how we were using our solicitors.
Yep.
I would also say, we talked about RFPing a number of other services between this year and last year. I think generally speaking, the world has been changing financially so dramatically, and strategies for managing cost have been changing so dramatically over the last several years with the pandemic, that we'd be wise probably to re-examine all of those services that we farm out contractually. So, yeah.
Agreed. Mrs. Katz.
Does any of this reflect anything with Jill Nagy? Because we do use her once in a while, don't we?
I don't think it does. A little bit. I don't know how much of this includes Jill's. Yeah, we'd have to get those. I don't know off the top of my head, but we can get that for you.
Because she's still technically, I think, our insurance.
Right, we still
Person,
consult with her, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So it's not nearly as it used to be,
Correct.
obviously, but there is a little. Yeah, we can get the
Okay.
exact number.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so anyway, we can look to put out for RFP then, if that's what.
Incidentally, insurance is something else we probably should.
Yep.
look out
Yep.
for RFP.
Yes.
It's
we-
that, it's
yep.
that time again.
Yep.
Yep, so we actually did, well, I'll let
Yeah.
Molly can talk about that, but we did that this year and we realized some savings and anyway. but-
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. We'll hear about it
Yep,
eventually.
yep.
Yeah. One more, while you're standing there, one more thing I think would be beneficial to RFP and with your tie-in with PML, maybe they could help see how viable this idea would be. I think it would be wise of us to look at hiring a negotiator for our upcoming union contracts, police, fire, are two that stick out next year. I think RVT is there, but they're no longer
AFS,
gonna be us, but
I think AFSME, is AFSME up? Yeah, I think AFSME.
are they up too? Okay, I know 1 year, the majority of them are, and I think it's next year. I couldn't remember who the third one was. I might be mixing them up with somebody, but I think that would be an interesting idea to look at there as well. Because I think when we get into, later tonight, next session, I mean, these are all services we definitely need, but it's where a bulk of our costs are, and this is certainly something definitely viable. I think that would be a good idea to look at.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Sure,
so
yeah.
if they have any kind of references, maybe rough ideas of what an expected cost might be, that would be, I think, helpful information going into December, if
Yep.
you're able to grab that.
I'll
Mayor
explore
Slaughter.
it, absolutely, yep.
Appreciate that. Any other comments or questions with the Bureau of Law? Okay. We'll move to the controller and treasurer. Controller is first.
Can we call out page numbers?
18.
18.
18, 19.
Sure.
You can.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, and members of council.
Will you pull the mic
Hey,
down?
Can you pull the microphone down a little?
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peg. Good evening.
Good evening. The controller's budget for 2024 is as follows. Salaries were for ordinance and at will employee of $62,314. The only other really, the biggest change is in the auditing service, which is $270,000. And general office, $800. General office equipment, $900, which gives us a total of $400,995. Any questions?
Any questions on the controllers? Ms. Mealy?
I'm that auditing expense, it seems from the narrative, Tracy, is built on the idea that we're going to complete all audits through 2023 and 2024.
2021 and 22.
Okay, 2021 and 22. That's not, so if we were to attempt to also do 23, we would need to find more money.
I don't. Man. Yeah, sure. We've had a discussion with the auditor regarding the fact that they are doing less of a service for 21, 22, 21 and 20, 21 and 22. So we're hoping that they will decrease their fees for those 3 years. So that will still give us some capacity for the 23 audit.
Okay, got it. So we may need to find more money, but hopefully not another 90.
Hopefully not.
Okay, all right, got it. Good, thanks.
Any other questions on the controller's budget? Okay, thank you, Peg. We'll move to the treasurer's budget, which, give me a second here, is on page 2021.
Good evening, council.
Good evening.
So there's only about two things on here that I'm really concerned about. One is we're increasing contract services by about $5,000. That's because I anticipate taking more civil complaints in regards to the business privilege tax. We've taken about 40 of those plus this year since I started it back in September. I anticipate to take about 150 a year just to get things in line. So that should cover that, as well as keeping things rotating once we do get the payouts from that as well. And then also we were decreasing our health insurance that was on the finance side. They're going to go ahead and do that because one of our people is only taking for single coverage. So, Adam, if no one has any questions, I just want to mention one more thing about the business privilege tax.
Sure.
I do not anticipate that it's going to increase forever. And there will come a time when it will not be able to be increased and we will stabilize. This is because of the actions that Nick and I have taken and you guys allowing us to have that third person earlier, that we're able to catch up on a lot of work that's been backlogged for a long time. It's going to stabilize. I don't know when, but once it stabilizes, I don't anticipate being able to squeeze more out of it like we have been this year. So I just want to caution people on constantly expecting more out of it.
Appreciate that, Kevin. Any questions, Ms. Mealy?
So when it does stabilize, Kevin, where do we think that it stabilizes? What do we think the realistic number for business privilege tax on a year-over-year basis is?
We've taken in about 2.6 this current year. So last year, I think it was 2.4. So it's been increasing about $200,000 each year as we bring more into it. But I think it might stabilize around 2.7, 2.8 next year or the year afterwards. And that's just as we get people caught up and get people on the tax rolls the way they're supposed to be.
Got it. So so we're not segregating out prior year versus current year.
I can get those for you and send those out.
I guess that's what I'm saying, because we are budgeting
2.9.
more, 2.2.
There will be
Yeah,
past year taxes in that amount.
right,
So I do think we're going to get some more next year. I've already got some that I'm looking at.
right.
But again, there will be a time when the bigger amounts that we're seeing are going to become like smaller amounts.
Right.
And we're not going to be able to squeeze a large amount of it like we did this year.
I mean, I will say 2.8 is, I honestly don't even remember what it was with Randy back when you and I started, but it was like a quarter of this much, wasn't it? What we were taking in for business privilege when we got on council?
I'm sorry.
How much was the business privilege when you and Liz joined council? Do you remember the value?
No.
I guess what I'm saying is, it seems to me like this is a pretty substantial increase
my
over
word,
it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we stabilize at 2.8, then I think we can all agree to be pretty damn happy with that.
Yeah.
But I think those words of caution are well taken.
Yeah.
We'll figure that the realistic number is 2.8 moving forward. It might, if it's not impossible, it might be wise for us to begin segregating out the prior year
Yeah.
take versus the actual like owed amount, like for.
Yeah, I could send that out on tomorrow morning if you guys want to see that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful if you could. And I also think that would enable us, because there are two things that business privilege taxes track. Of course, one of them is how many people haven't been paying, we're making them catch up. But the secondary thing is if we are actually increasing the amount of business that we're doing in the city, right? And it would be nice to be able to see those two things separated,
Yeah.
If the income of businesses in the city is increasing and consequently this tax is increasing, then that's great news. If we're just catching people who haven't paid it in the past, then that's a different story. So, yeah, thank you.
That's part of it. And another part of it is we are trying to bring in new businesses. I do want to make motion that we do try and make some more privilege programs. So we kind of encourage people that are here to keep investing back into the city. I know the grant program is one that Derek has been trying to get going. So if we can get some more of that, maybe add some of the excess privilege we weren't expecting into those types of programs, it would certainly be well to help out a lot of the new business owners that are coming in, a lot of the ones that have been here a while as well.
So your idea would be to take business privilege tax that we make in excess of what we're expecting in a given year and roll that into a grant program for.
Into grant
encouraging
programs
business
or
development.
into programs that we could get back out to the business owners and make sure that they're getting supported, because
Yeah.
it's nice for them so that when they see something's coming back to them,
Mhm.
instead of we're just taking the money from them, say, hey, look, here's some things. We want to see you guys succeed. We like what you're doing.
Mhm.
Hopefully you guys can go out and continue to make more money.
Yeah, I think that's a rock solid idea. I mean, and I think if we can help provide even a minimal amount of grant funding for people to reinvest in their businesses, and then that in turn generates income that's
Yeah.
the positive thing.
The other thing that is not on this, but is also anticipated is that I will be sending out business programs that I discover either through the state or that we're doing through the city out with the licenses.
Mhm.
So any businesses that are paying this, I'm doing my best to encourage and inform them of the programs that are going on in the city.
Mrs. Katz.
It's amazing what has happened since we're doing this all in-house
Yeah,
and what we've lost when we were outsourcing.
this is all down to Nick's bringing this in.
Mhm.
He did a tremendous activity doing this, and I could not have foreseen like how successful this has been, but it's large down to his acts and bringing this into house.
It's been a wonderful job that you've done. Thank you.
That's great.
Any other comments or questions on the treasurer tax collector's budget?
No,
Kevin, thank you. You do?
no, other than that, just to commend Kevin for all the work that he's
Mhm.
done. You know, it's been rough the past couple of years, but you know, he's like a bloodhound. Finding all of it, he's sniffing it all out.
I don't know if I want that nickname already.
I mean,
Kevin Bloodhound.
he's not giving up. He's doing one heck of a good job, so.
Well done, sir.
Huh? He is a Mackey. So good job, Kevin.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, that takes care of our general government category. Let's switch over to human resources. Malia, welcome and good evening. And we're on page, 24, 25.
Good evening. So you'll see on page 24 that the major differences with the human resources budget for next year would be the increase due to the 3% at will across the board increase. And then we are adding some additional drug and alcohol testing. This was a recommendation from the liability insurance broker that when we have accidents within the city that depending on the severity of the accident, we conduct drug and alcohol testing just to sort of cover the city a little bit better than what we have been. Other than that, we did, as the mayor alluded to, we did put out an RFP this year for the health insurance. Mrs. Katz had asked for that the past couple of years. We had 5 different brokers come in. Jill Nagy and Heather and I met with them. Ultimately, it comes down to we want to keep the same insurance through Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Since it is contracted through the unions, we have great coverage. We kind of don't want to rock that boat, at least for now. So it comes down to the level of service of the broker and their fees. So I started that process in September. To be honest, it just didn't give me enough time to really go in depth to what a change in the broker would mean. So this would mean moving away from Benetcon. I do plan to look at that again next year. So Benetcon was one of the brokers that came in. Maybe they got a little bit nervous because they did drop our premiums by 3% across the board then. So I did put them on notice that we will look at this again in 2024.
Okay.
Other than that, in 2022, we decreased the over 65 police retirees, their premiums by 2/3. And then this year we reduced the the fire retirees over 65 by 2/3 as well. So that made a difference as well. So hopefully the budgets will reflect that.
Any questions? Ms. Meal?
Just how do we reduce them by 2/3?
So there was a plan, it's called a Freedom Blue plan that we went with straight through Highmark instead of going through Benetcon. We were able to move out from them, just go straight through Highmark.
Okay.
And it's better coverage, took a little bit of arm twisting, but ultimately the plans are better, the premiums are lower, so it was a win-win.
Awesome. Thanks.
Any other questions, Mrs. Katz?
Under, it says medical exams.
Mhm.
Is that what you're talking about with the drug and alcohol
Yes.
checking?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just wanted to double check.
Sure.
Any other, Ms. Mealy?
actually just one, the drug and alcohol testing, we will not run afoul of the unions in any way, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
we have the right to do that.
We have the right
so.
to, so we have the right to conduct drug and alcohol testing at any point on any of our employees?
Yep, we're doing it. It's mainly for the public works employees because they hold CDLs.
Got it.
So we're required to do the random testing 4 times a year. And then we're doing testing now pre-hire. And then for any more substantial accidents, we'll do the testing as well.
We don't have the same agreement with the unions in the police and fire department, or do we do random testing in those?
We do not, just because they don't have CDLs, so we're not required by federal law to do that.
Okay.
So that's a good point, though, to broach with the unions. Fortunately, it hasn't been an issue, so.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly I've never heard any stories about anything like that in either of those departments. And that's not at all what I'm insinuating. I was just kind of curious how that looked across the board for us.
Yeah, I think we just talked about it because, obviously Public Works drives those, bigger vehicles, do a lot more damage. So we have an audit through the liability insurance broker, and this was one thing that they recommended.
Got it. Okay.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Yep.
This isn't necessarily directed at HR, but Chief, our firefighters that drive the tanker trucks, drive the ladder trucks, they have CDLs, correct? Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Vince is gonna go get a farm tag.
I am. It's gonna be the only way I could afford to buy a Lamborghini.
Any other comments or questions for the human resources budget? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Molly. We will move to finance and administration on pages 15 through 17.
Hello, the budget and fiscal officer budget. There is approximately 12% decrease. This is in large part due to the city not having government finance solutions in 2024. Moving to the finance and purchasing budget. We are requesting a new position, a grant administrator. Several department leaders have requested this position, mainly because they have no time to go out and look for money themselves or do the legwork that it requires to write the proposals and to administer the grants once received. Also, which would make up the 23% increase, we're projecting a 5% increase in the insurance, the commercial policies for 2024.
Okay. Any kind of questions, Mrs. Katz?
If you're looking for a grant person, let's see, the police department is looking for grants on their own. The fire department has looked for grants on their own. If you get a grant person, would they oversee all of this?
Yes.
So it would
Yeah,
take and help the other departments?
yes, so we see that in the future, this person handling everything for every department, going out and looking for fire, looking for police, looking for public works grants, and then actually having the qualifications to draw up the proposals, which are an in-depth process. And then once the grants are awarded, following through with the reconciliations that are required by all the agencies and reporting that is necessary. We look at this position as more than fully being able to pay for the salary and the benefits with all the money that is potentially out there that the city is losing.
And
Mayor, I have a
Oh.
question. Shouldn't our lobbyists be doing some of this?
I was going to follow up with that. That was going to be what I was going to say. So it's a lot of the day-to-day oversight. This is really loud. But so for example, we got the PCCD grant and police, and Captain Ottaviano right now is charged in-house with doing a lot of the day-to-day. So how's it being spent? What's the hours that the police are spending on the grant? And it's just very, very time intensive. And we don't have someone in-house to do that piece of it. So Delta and Keller, they help with some of the obviously writing of the grants, some of the oversight, but really that part that's in-house that we're required, and we are getting, fortunately, we're getting a number of grants, but we have just produced itemized lists or itemized hours, whatever the case might be, per the grant. And that's really where we are just getting hammered with the time that's being spent that they don't necessarily have. And so we were figuring if we could bring everything in-house, that would save, in the long run, save money, but also it's going to save our employees, some that are doing the day-to-day things related to the grant, and not just submitting it to, to the portal or to DCD or DCNR, but we have to track all of that. And that's really where it's becoming very cumbersome recently, particularly with the PCCD, but we're just in general, it's been quite a heavy lift for some of these grants. And a lot of the employees are coming saying, man, we really could use someone to help offset some of that time, because Delta and Keller don't do the day-to-day items related to that. So it was just an idea that we had, and we think in the long run to have someone in-house and then save us, ultimately move away from the outsourcing some of it.
I've been saying all along, I think we've been missing out on a lot of funding because my philosophy has always been, you have a good grant writer, they do the job. They're as gold, what they can do for anybody. I don't care whether it's a city, colleges, whatever. A great grant writer can bring in a ton of money if they're on top of everything. But this grant writer would then work in conjunction with our lobbyist also, because they would have better connections maybe.
Yes, and I think this is what we're exploring, the conversation we're having. We have someone in-house. Maybe they could do it all. Maybe they do have the connections. Or maybe we still have, for a time period, we do have lobbyists in DC or whatever. And again, I want to be clear, this is not a trying to knock Delta or anything like that. We just think with the amount of hours we are spending, and some of our employees are spending on some of these grants to bring it in-house, would just say, I mean, we don't have a person doing that. So it's right now, our employees are tasked with doing some of that oversight and the daily operations in order to get the funding or to get, if it's a reimbursement, to provide all of those, the daily reports or whatever.
I'm happy to hear this because I think we're going to benefit greatly with this. I really do. Like I said, I think we missed out on a lot of things because time-wise, it's for the departments to try and go after everything. They're not aware of everything, what's going on. So having one person that's delegated, I think it's going to be great.
And again, Delta and Keller have done a fantastic job. I mean, we've got a lot, and even with the levy and Congressman Keller, I know we've talked about that. So we've gotten millions and millions of dollars, which is great. There's still millions of dollars out there, I think, to your point. And the millions of dollars we received require, again, substantial oversight and management. And that's the hard piece.
Well, you need to tell them what to look for at times, what you're looking for and what departments and what you need money for to go after.
And to Councilman Yoder, the President Yoder's point earlier with PML, they also have a new tool, a grant tool that you can literally just search thousands and thousands of grants. So anyway, yes.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Biter, then Ms. Mealy.
For that position, would it not be something that community development would be better suited to have within their department?
I think it's probably a discussion we could have. I don't know how everybody feels about it. I mean, I think we thought initially it's a financial position. CD is sort of, HUD, home, fair, things of that nature. So we just thought if it's in CD, it's may require some additional hourly tracking if we get into the federal dollars. So I think personally keeping it in finance, and I don't want to speak for Heather or Tracy, but I think it makes the most sense right now, and then they can just work in the finance office citywide and not sort of, not the city separate, but it's sort of with their funding is a little separate.
Okay.
Ms. Mealy.
Well, Eric stole my first question. But I'm still gonna build on that. If I'm understanding what we're thinking of this position as, how the administration's thinking of it, at least initially, it sounds like it's more of a reporting on existing grants position rather than a chasing new grants position. Because to me, it would make sense in that case, if that was what the position we're doing for them to be in the finance office, because that is primarily a financial job, right? Tracking hours, dealing with expenditures, tabulating, and I would assume that the person would work quite a bit with the new finance software that we just purchased, as well as the new payroll software that we just purchased. Although, to what extent will the combination of the new finance software and the new payroll software allow us to track some of this stuff that we're currently wasting a bunch of administrative time tracking? Well, not wasting, pardon me, but utilizing a bunch of administrative time to track.
Yeah.
It will either of those two programs help us with that, or is that not something that can be?
Chime in. I'm not 100% sure on the software yet, Tracy and Heather actually working on that.
Yeah.
Software. So the software will allow us to track it, but our current software tracks that as well. It's more a case of like the local law enforcement grant, like they want every single invoice copied and they want you to verify like all different kinds of things on that. And so we have a police officer that's taking his time to go through all of that right now.
Right.
And so we're seeing that this position would not only, there's multiple things in our vision. It was researching grants, writing grants, and then administering them and verifying compliance, because that's huge. There are so many requirements over this federal money that the police are now getting. And we're all trying to do a piece of it where this would be centralized and verifying that we're all legit on all our expenses.
So I think it would be both your
Okay.
question, Councilman, but existing
Right,
compliance,
Right,
but also
right.
well, I guess the reason that I'm asking that is that we have talked for years, and I think part of the transition when we brought part of community development into the general fund budget was the whole idea that the city really does need a planning department, right? And to me, applying for grants and or seeking grant funding, writing grants falls within planning more than within finance. I can see an argument both ways, but if we're saying that this person is doing, say, 65-70% grant writing / seeking of new grants, and then 30 to 35% reporting, it seems to me like it falls more within community development. I understand some of the conflicts there, but given that we've now brought about $500,000 of the community development budget into the general fund, it seems like there probably is room for someone within that department who isn't affiliated with community development at all. I don't know. I guess it seems to me that in the past, we've maybe made some missteps by placing something in a department simply for ease initially. And then in the end, it winds up that the position isn't taken full advantage of because it's not operating within a department that really allows it to kind of grow and expand to do what it needs to do.
So my only response to that is that community development is economic and community development.
Right.
It's not necessarily compliance and reporting over police grants.
Right.
Compliance and reporting over fire grants. And so if you're building that into a community economic development budget, it's misleading in terms of what those costs truly are.
I guess that's why I'm asking what percentage of the time this person is putting into which, maybe at some point in the future, we're talking about two positions. I'm not really sure, but I'm hearing these two what sound like pretty different things involved in this position. One of which is a very detail oriented person who's tracking the way that we're expending current grants, and another who is the sort of a visionary individual who's going out and looking for grants that we can fit into, and that dreaming up ways to make us fit into the definition, of an applicant for this or that grant. And depending on which of those two jobs within this current job predominates, which one we think they're going to do more, I think that sort of determines which department it falls under. If we see them doing more of the reporting after the fact, then it seems like more of a financial position. Whereas if we see them doing more of the planning and development elements, then it seems like it falls under community development. I don't know, because it is a position that you guys are putting in the budget. It's not a position that I'm proposing, although it is
Right.
something that I thought we needed for a while. I'm not disagreeing with you on its inclusion. But the nature of the position, I think, sort of dictates the oversight, because I do think if we're interested in the long run in building a planning department out of community and economic development, then we need to have grant management within that planning department, not within finance necessarily. But we can keep fighting about this for.
No,
Well, no,
it's- I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think how that translates into the new software, because we have an community economic development department. So that's not a grant writer, grant planner for the city. That's community and economic development. And so I'm just trying to think how that falls within the building of a software that you're going to implement in 3 months.
Unless we
Yes.
create a planning department, which we,
Unless you create
Which
the
we-
other,
which
the
we
other
have- we
choice
used to
is
have.
to put it in
Right.
city hall operating where it's allocated like IT is across the
Across
board.
right.
So
Okay.
that's the other choice.
So sorry, so
I-
you're thinking about something I'm not familiar with, which is how our financial software is going to function? Is
Yes,
that what
I'm sorry.
okay.
That's not like I'm going, everything's going to report that these are our costs for community economic development. And now you're
Okay.
putting in
Right,
a grant writer who's working citywide,
right.
where finance is working citywide. I guess that's kind of how I was
Okay,
thinking of it.
I
You're
understand.
thinking about it from the nuts and bolts of like, where's it
Yes.
gonna sit,
Reporting and I. wanna report
reporting
to
and
you.
making sure that
Yeah.
it's correct. And
Correct.
yeah, I get you.
Okay, all right.
Right. So that's just,
but I think it could make some sense though, if we want to create a planning department. Because we're also at some point, I'm sure, going to talk about GIS software. Which again, I mean, obviously not tonight, but just, yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about GIS before. I know Councilman Mackey has talked about it. So that's on our, that's part of the financial strategic plan
Right.
with DCED.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of thinking about what,
Well, and Tracy might be right that maybe that falls under some, well, or you like falls under some not yet quite existing department that
Yeah.
perhaps incorporates IT
Mhm.
and planning and, right,
Well,
sort of
I-
general city services or, anyway,
Right.
right, yeah. But it's allocated across departments.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, all right, well, I've opened up a can of worms there then, or Eric. and
I mean, I'm not against any of, I mean, I think it's all good ideas, to be
Yeah,
honest. So
yeah,
I-
no, I'm
I-
just- yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
we can leave it there for a minute and think about it,
Right.
because we got a little while to
Yeah,
decide.
yeah.
Which is the awesome thing about getting the budget so early, guys,
Yeah.
that it's not like a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and in 2 weeks we have to vote on it, and so we don't have any time to think about how it plays out. So,
Yeah, I will add the idea of charging it like we do IT seems like a very logical
Yeah.
Mhm.
approach to it, just because every department will be utilizing it. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up.
And also one person, Liz, you may be right. We might need 2 people. Because one person could get bogged down in all the paper trails.
It is a lot, and quite frankly, until we started getting the grants we're getting, I mean, it's a lot.
Well, many years ago, I worked on a theater grant for one of the theaters. And like I said, many years ago, and I'm not kidding you, it was this thick with everything. I hate to think what things are now with grant writing.
Well, I think kind of something that kind of spurred in my mind when Eric, Liz, you were kind of talking through a lot of what you were trying to get out there. The thing kind of gravitating back to what Liz, you were saying. I mean, there's a difference between compliance almost
Mhm.
versus, I think, the conceptual
right,
planning aspect of that. For me, and I think when we go back to kind of the conversation we've had the past couple of years about community development, for me, I think that whether you call it 20, 30, 45%, that conceptual stuff,
Mhm.
I've been looking for that in the community development office. So whether it's our community development leadership, whether it's a team member in there, that's what I've been looking for, especially since we brought that back into the general fund.
Mhm.
So I think, Skip, whenever you kind of talk through your budget, it'd be really helpful to understand why that is not the case, because it seems based on kind of where this position is going, that will not be the case. And so understanding why that is would be very helpful for me, at least, to understand.
Mhm.
So thank you that was a good point you brought up, Liz. And Eric.
Technically, Eric started it.
And Eric. Any other comments or questions on finance administration? Okay. Heather, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move to the Department of Public Works. And it's the Scott show now for a little bit. So yours starts out on page 35, I believe, right?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome, by the way, good evening.
Good evening, members of council. The 2024 budget for Public Works, starting with the Office of Directors, we're up 39%. One reason being, I'd like to add a assistant manager to help me. And 3% increase for the at-will employees and a 2.5% increase for O&E contracts. The streets and traffic control is up 1.24%. That's due to 2.5% increase of public works contract for the streets guys. I'm gonna jump around a little bit here, and then down to flood control. We're down 46%. We're adding 2.5% to the flood guys contract, but we're also down. The reason we're down that much is because of Graphius Run. We spent all that money that you guys allocated last year for that. And then I can jump back up because I might need a little assistance with this. Is the transit dollars. So we're up 21.59%, and I'm believing a lot of this is due to the fact that RVT is now split from the city. This is a share that we have to pay them. Correct.
Well, yeah, before it was a transfer when they were under the umbrella of the city. We just transferred it between departments in the city. And Heather and Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way DCED likes to see it allocated is in the public works. So this is just our local share. Each municipality has to pay X amount for the local share. We've always done that. So that's nothing new. The only difference now is that you're going to see it in public works since there's no transfer to the utility fund or anything like that. So it's really no different other than it's now being shown in public works, and that's the way DCED has it put into the city's budget.
And I'll do one more is the Parks Department. We're up 4.14% due to the 2.5 increase of the employees. You can see some of the major contributors there was the employees went from single to family coverage. The stormwater fees also went in the Brandon Park. And some capital project expenditures. Do you have any questions on those couple of portions?
Any comments or questions on, I think the summary that Scott was kind of going through, or then any line items in those additional categories? Mrs. Katz.
Do we still only have two people on flood control?
Yes, yep.
Ms. Mealy.
Scott, any chance you can walk me through what we're putting into street resurfacing this year across the budget?
Street resurfacing, what are we doing with street resurfacing in the general fund?
How
Anything
much?
or not?
The street resurfacing is 125,000. All that.
Yeah, but then there's usually liquid fuels, community development.
So 350,000, I think, out of my liquid fuels, 125,000 out of general fund. I think another additional 300 and some odd thousand out of Act 13. We usually get some CBDG. There was some things we missed last year, so that wasn't covered through them this year. And I think the total of the paving contract is 1.something million, some change. So most of it's out of Act 13, general fund, and my liquid fuels, all of it to pay that.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're not anticipating much from community development this year.
No, not this year. Nope.
Nothing. Got it. Okay, so I'm adding up then about 775. I'll keep an eye.
Yeah,
on
I'm
this. I keep
missing,
looking
I
through
know
it.
I'm missing something in there.
Okay.
Act 13.
Mhm.
County liquid fuels. Resurfacing, it's 23,000 out of the street resurfacing, reconstruction out of the county liquid fuels.
County liquid fuels is also. Does that appear under our liquid fuels or
Pardon me?
does county liquid fuels show up under our liquid fuels?
Yes.
Mhm.
Was anything else from you?
No.
You're okay.
I think that's everything for the.
Mr. Pelisi, I thought you had a question.
I did, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm just going down here, Scott, looking at a couple things.
Oh.
The one thing that jumped out at me, and it may not seem like a whole lot, but
Oh.
this year's budget allotment was more than twice what it was last year. Traffic paint. We're going from,
So the reason why that is in the past, when we painted the city, the yellow lines, the white lines, skips. That was pulled out of general fund. They budgeted for that in general fund. Well, it's a liquid fuel eligible expense. So I pulled it out of the general fund to pay for liquid fuels with that. So that's why that's down now to 3,000 versus 20-some thousand where it used to be.
okay. That's really the only thing that jumped out at me that it was like a 200% increase.
Scott, I see you have nothing there for MS4. Any expenses on page 39.
MS4,
Under other department expense.
yeah, I mean, there's never been anything as far as I know. I know we work with the water authority with the MS4 as far as budget. I mean, Bill is now a big part of that, jumping in with them, having meetings about that stuff.
So historically, and maybe Bonnie, Liz, Randy can maybe chime in on this. So I was always of the impression that was for like stormwater projects that we would pay out of the general fund. From the water authority's perspective, we've kind of transferred compliance and all that to them. So there's nothing there for that. So I think maybe the question is, are there any stormwater projects we need to do that we know of? Like, I guess maybe from a project's perspective, how are we looking?
For us, we're good.
We're good. We're in
Yeah,
good
yeah,
shape.
because everything kind of,
Okay.
like you say, got shifted over to the water.
Okay.
authority.
But is the water authority taking care of the? Because I don't believe they are. There were some best management practices that we needed to implement between us and Loyalsock per that agreement for MS4. And we were definitely looking at footing the bill for about 35% of the cost of all those. And that I'm assuming,
That's where I'm coming from.
well, depending on how we structured the stormwater authority, may or may not fall under the responsibilities of the stormwater authority / water authority. But I thought for whatever reason, the cost of those best management practice, like the cost of the BMP implementation was going to come back to the city.
Okay.
I can confirm that though with Mike.
Yeah, I'll have to
You
look
could
into
check in
that.
on that. That would
I
be
had
the
actually, we really should have an executive session with the water authority one way or the other. And I would say sooner rather than later about our responsibilities on stormwater versus theirs. Because I think there were a handful of things that fell through the cracks on our end with the stormwater, some of the stormwater reporting the last couple of years. And at least the water authorities have the impression that they're up to date on their end. So we should probably meet with them and make sure that we're not letting stuff fall through the cracks, and God forbid some of it's budgeting for some pollution reduction program stuff. But I honestly don't remember whether that's supposed to be covered by stormwater fees or whether we're still supposed to be paying for some of that out of the general fund. So
We had a meeting with Mike Wacker. about MS4 of things that we were responsible for in the city. I don't have the information here tonight, so I don't know. And that's why I'm asking.
I know we just recently started up, and as Bill came on board, we had a meeting with the Water Authority. And we're back to our monthly meetings with them, trying to, get back on track and stay on track with the MS4.
Yeah, what Mr. Wiley brought, that was a consent order with EPA, just making sure that
Yeah.
we're monitoring that really wasn't any projects or anything. But we can still get with Mike. I know
Yeah.
they're doing great work with the stormwater, making sure all of that, but we can get, I'm sure he'll provide an update. Mike Miller. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
What Mr. Wiley was talking about, yeah, that was a codes enforcement. If people are out of compliance with their.
Miss Mealy, you had another question? Or not? You,
I totally lost.
It slipped your mind?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It
That's
was
okay.
right there and then I got involved in this whole debate about, and it
No
went
worries.
away. I apologize. If it comes back, I might.
Okay.
Oh,
And-
actually, no, never mind. I apologize. It was follow up on Vince's traffic paint question.
Go for it.
Because I would really like to see us including the existing bike lane map that we have in the cities. We have it, we adopted it by ordinance in the city. Now, whether or not when we put where the rubber meets the road, it turns out that the bike lanes work out as well as we thought they would is one thing, but
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no.
I was gonna say, Scott and I've met with Rob Cooley and the bicycle folks.
Yep.
I think he's a Penn College.
Yep.
Professor, but so we're looking at that. And to your point, he's done a map. I know some other folks have tentative maps that are in conjunction with our ordinance to look at areas where we can start to have bike lanes and work with, if it's PennDOT roads or city roads, so that we can start to look at pedestrian safety, bike safety and bike lanes and what that might look like. So we actually just met a couple weeks ago. We were talking about, because we were awarded the pump track grant. We just got wind of that recently. And so that's going to go at Shaw Park and really thinking about how folks are going to bike around the city and use our trails and what that looks like, moving forward and how it's all interconnected. What's the trail? And I think that's going to obviously be a piece of our in 24 as we start to update our Parks and Rec comp plan and what do the trails and things look like. Yeah. So
I guess it just seems to me whether we're doing it through liquid fuels or through streets and parks, we should be building a little bit more money into our traffic line painting to accommodate for putting in bike lanes when we do the rest.
I mean, how much is that? I don't think it's.
I mean, well, and actually that's the one question that I have is I don't know whether what we're paying is how many streets they're going down or whether what we're paying is how much paint they're laying down. I'm assuming it's a combination of the two, but.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, because I guess that bike thing, just like the Heart Walk, obviously what used to be a thing that, kind of got pushed by the wayside. So I'll have to actually turn back on that and actually look to see what that one entails, because I know there was some stuff that Bonnie was talking about putting hearts back on, and as far as the bike trail too. But that's something I can look into to see what that actually costs. I don't think it's a big chunk of money, but it's something we could, do. And obviously if it's on the roadways, yes, it is liquid fuel eligible. But I mean, we'll see how many miles we have to do. There's where we'll see.
Right. Yeah, I think at some point I looked at it and figured it would be maybe $5,000 or something like that. And then if we had to restripe them every other year or something, but I think that we should, especially with the pump track going in, we should be looking at trying to do that in 2024 when we do the rest of our street line painting. If you find, Scott, that we need to increase an allocation somewhere or another, let me know because I'd be happy to make the motion for that. Thanks, Alex.
Any other comments or questions on the first part of the public works budget? Okay, that takes us to Parks Recreation. I don't know if you're hanging out.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring him up.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, council. The recreation budget for this year, as you can see, far as under recreation, we went up a 0.57. That was due to a 3% increase proposed for all at-will employees, plus part-time employees at $10.75 an hour. Also, to bring this out to like $16.40 an hour. Also, there was a purchase of a copier under that also. Under the recreation programs, we were up 3.73%. And that was due to some of the capital project savings for capital equipment purchases. Also, Bowman Field was added far as their roof. The swimming pool program, we actually lost some there, which that was a decrease to get closer to the actual expense for 2003, but also a decrease due to less repairs anticipated for 2004.
All right. Any questions on recreation and parks? Any members? The one question I've gotten, this might be more for Scott. So we're putting a lot into parks, specifically infrastructure. What are we doing from a maintenance perspective? Where is that covered in here? If it is, it's not clearly.
Part of splash pads, things of that nature.
Splash pads, baseball fields in Brandon Park.
Pool and Memorial.
Pool Memorial. I saw an article the other week about maybe doing a splash pad and some other stuff over in Newberry. How are we going to maintain this stuff?
As far as the splash pad at Shaw, that, I mean, obviously, a lot of you guys know we had a rocky start with it, getting it going this year. But once it got actually dialed in, it was fairly kind of low maintenance, zero issues. We just had a few things we had to tweak. And obviously, you're gonna have a little bit of bugs and everything. But as far as the maintenance goes, I mean, the water costs, I think it's very minimal. It recycles a lot of it. So it's not a big portion like the pool. The first initial startup of the pool, we have to we drain it down, clean it out. We actually fill the thing. And I think it's around 360,000 gallons. And then obviously the liner we put in stopped the majority of the leaks now. Obviously, we add some water maybe once or twice a week due to the evaporation and the kids getting out. So that cost is captured in, I think it's in the pool for water costs. So that's as far as the water, the maintenance for the pool. I mean, obviously we got a new liner, the filter's fabulous. It's just zero maintenance. We go over and look at the numbers and it's good to go. I mean, it is well worth the investment what we put in, the man hours it takes to have Vanessa to go over and actually test the chemicals. She goes over and looks, jots them down and good to go. The thing is, it's bulletproof right now. It's working real well. That should be good for roughly 20-25 years. So the maintenance on that is very low as well. Brandon Park, ball fields. Now that's going to be an agreement with Wall for maintenance. I think their job is to mow it, drag and keep up with the fields. Anything outside the field, that's going to be us. Now I know like Cummings getting involved up there with their fields as well. They're in charge of their facility. We're going to be in charge of the outskirts of that for the mowing and upkeep of that.
So what you're saying is, so far what we've done, there is actual minimal maintenance to maintain everything that we're doing from a parks infrastructure perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not when we had first initially did it, we had a lot of manpower, my guys out there, but once everything got dialed in, we weren't out. It wasn't very much. We were out there. He goes out once a day to check it because that's due to the code that you have to run it by for Department of Health. But other than that, it's been pretty easy.
Okay. I guess over the next couple of years, I can see that. I struggle to understand that because I'll use the Brandon Park ball fields for an example. I mean, they were in pretty terrible shape. And I hope we can avoid that happening again. And I mean, in my mind, that's a maintenance thing. So I guess over the next couple of years, once they're operable playing and we get more into what's happening with our recreation investments. As we find stuff, like we need to jump on it. Factor it into the budget and then in the following year, that kind of stuff. I don't think any of us want to see anything that we've done get into that kind of shape again.
I
So-
agree. And I would piggyback with that too, to save like the courts, the tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts that we've resurfaced. That we make sure we keep an eye. I mean, obviously they're brand new right now.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
pretty much everything is.
Yeah, the maintenance for that would be the nets, and we just actually bought a bunch of nets, so, you know, there'd be a routine, they'll go up in the spring, come down in the fall, so they're not out in the winter, so you get a couple of more years of longevity out of those. The hoops is just, they're glass backboards with the net, so that's very low maintenance. Other than that, I mean, seems to be fairly low maintenance as we're going up with what we started this summer.
And if we start to see any cracks or anything, sealing them over, budgeting that and things. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Mealy.
It sounded to me like what I was hearing was a wish on your part, Adam, to see some sort of a maintenance fund built into maybe the capital projects budget for, you know, something that we're dropping in, you know, $150,000 a year, saying like, this is the money that we're going to use when we need a major repair, when we need new pieces of equipment, because some of them have gotten vandalized or otherwise damaged at either the pool or shop plate or shop park or something like that. And that frankly seems to me like a reasonable concept. Whether we implement it this year or not, I don't know, but you know, what did it just cost us? The resurfacing of all the tennis courts was
Yeah.
300 grand, right?
Yeah.
You know, so if we're looking at having to do that again in 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
you know, like,
I believe, I'm pretty sure that it's in the capital projects, the filter.
yeah, the filter, I think.
Pool filter.
Yeah.
I think the liner, and obviously the memorial pool has to have that $50,000 in there for any small maintenance that revolves around the
Yeah.
pool. There was something else I was just gonna say.
So maybe it's two, maybe it's a line item in capital projects for the long-term court resurfacing or things that,
I mean,
and then maybe it's an annual line item in the regular general fund for maintenance, like annual maintenance.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I would be fine with either and or both of those. I guess what I'm saying is some of this stuff you can't really quantify. I mean, we're
Yeah.
told that the Shaw Place has a 20-year, you know, life, but is it going to be 20 years? Is it going to be 15? Are we going to want to replace it, or are we going to say, nah, maybe we're going to do something different? You know what I mean? Can we get a grant for it? Yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of stuff hanging out there, but if we put some sort of money in there that we could at least use as matching funds for grants, if we're looking for a grant to renovate a facility, that we, you know, that probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
So the other thing I was gonna say, was, once we did the pool liner, we had them guys come in, did the testing on the gutter system. And talking to them, there was a 6 year, he's like, I give you 6 years on this gutter, because actually it was a used gutter they brought in from another pool. So that's when I got with Tracy, and we put it together into capital projects to purchase that in 6 years, 5 to 6 years. I think the cost of that's 150,000 to do all that. So that was put in, you know, anticipating that in 5 to 6 years, you know, we'll
Yeah.
keep an eye on it.
Good, so we're on, I guess what I'm hearing is the maintenance expenses that we know exist, that we know are out there somewhere, we are funding. And the question is maybe having a little bit of a slush fund for the maintenance expenses that we can't quantify that easily, right? The stuff we don't know when it's going to expire. Because we do know that between Memorial Park and, I mean, our Brandon Park equipment's that's gonna time out here sometime fairly soon. But even the new parks equipment only has maybe 15, 20 years in it. So we've got a lot of stuff out there that we need to.
Yeah, and as we go on, I go out and we do new projects. I try to capture that, and I try to figure out, how much longer, like you look in here, the Bowman Field roof. That was never in anything. So, I got talking to them guys. There's a lot of things at Bowman Field that has to be captured and looked at, the HVAC. It's just like,
Oh, man.
where's this at? So, and I'm trying to prepare for this. is
Yeah.
Trying to get roof longevity, trying to figure out all this other stuff that goes along with it. We buy seats every 5 years to replace the ones that are cracked. And it's just, it's not much. It's $22,000 for 100 of them, but it's still the fact that we got a place pulled from. So.
Yeah, and that question, I mean, don't take that as a criticism by any means. I know that you are. I didn't directly see it in here, so I wasn't sure what it looked like, kind of how we're covering that. I mean, but you get it. It's a very important item. I mean, it's why we are sitting here versus in City Hall. It's why we've put all this money into parks because they weren't maintained for a while, right? So,
And if we hadn't gotten lucky with
rescue plan
$26 million
funding, yeah,
worth of ARPA funding, we'd be
Yeah.
on a pretty crappy park system, right?
correct, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Scott. Mrs. Katz, you had a question?
Is the liner in the pool okay?
Yeah.
Okay, because the way you stated that. it was-
No, so I didn't want, a lot of people's like, well, you know, it's down an inch or two that day. Well, you got it, like I said, you get kids jumping out of that thing, you're gonna lose an inch. But, you know, we try to keep it right there at the, about an inch over the scum gutter is the way it's supposed to be. But, you know, you can go in 3 days later and it's down, well, it's 90 degrees out and you got 300 kids splashing all the water out. So, you know, there's no, and that's what I wanted to reiterate. There's no leak in it.
Okay,
It does, we do add water and that's the reason for it. It's the evaporation and the kids getting in and out.
I was kind of panicking there for a second. Sean, are you chemically certified yet?
Not yet, not yet, but
Working
I'll
on
be
that?
taking my test very soon. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mealy?
Last question, because this was something that I was hoping to follow up on last Thursday, and then I wasn't here last Thursday, but the concerts in the park are presumably being conducted at the band shell. Where are we at with the work on the band shell? Did we figure that out?
So it was, if you remember, the estimates came in about $200,000 over. I think it was tabled at that time. I think we have identified 200,000. I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, but if the state budget is passed, I think we'll be able to capture, or I should say, when the state budget. I know Delta's been working closely on that to get that extra 200,000 into the city. So if that happens, then we can go ahead and get started immediately. We're ready to go.
Okay,
So, yeah.
and that is a winter, summer project, like we could do it.
I
now.
think they could do some of it now, and then they would
Okay.
probably have to start, you know, most of it in the spring or whatever, and hopefully be done by the summer concert
Got it.
series. So
Well, I mean, I would encourage us, maybe it was Randy's idea last year, but it's a solid one. We should consider hosting some of those concerts one way or the other at Waste Garden. We've put a lot of money into that park,
Oh, I agree.
and it's just an area of town that people don't necessarily frequent as much as Brandon, and it wouldn't be a bad idea. So if we have a situation where the band shell's not ready, perhaps first thing in the spring, if we move some of the concerts down to the.
or even if it is ready, maybe we have some.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would be the case.
But yeah, I
I'd
agree.
make, but
So,
yeah.
yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I agree.
Right.
But hopefully it's ready. I did talk to, I believe Mr. Lundy was the Lundy Construction was the low bidder on that. And he's aware of that as well.
Okay,
So.
awesome. Great. Thanks, Darren.
Any other comments or questions? The only last thing I would leave, I think it would be valuable. I mean, it doesn't have to happen in December, but in January, whether it's to Public Works or to council. And if this happened and it was a meeting I missed, that my bad, but I think it'd be good to understand kind of where our parks plan is at, where it's gonna go. Again, I think it was earlier in the week, a reference to looking at splash pads, et cetera, over in Newberry. I think just comprehensively kind of looking at where we're at, what the next steps are with our parks in our city would be a very good idea. Especially as we kind of look at, I think, at the last components of trying to spend what we have left of rescue plan funding that has to be allocated this year. So I think that would be a very good use of part of a meeting.
Just to clarify, so the public's not cruise this year, you mean 2024? I know what you mean.
2024, yes.
Right. I know, I just want people
Thank
to
you, yes,
Be
thank you.
misconstrued. Yeah, December
Yep.
24. But to that point, yes, you'll be seeing a lot of that. Part of the DCNR award, we had to create a community committee to make a recommendation on who will be our consultant for the comp plan update. So that hopefully will be coming to council in December, this December, to start in January. So you'll see, we can have that conversation, that park plan. Well, it's park, rec, open space, green infrastructure, sort of holistically. So that will give us a plan via the DCNR grant. And that, of course, will have input from everyone. But we can, during that time as well, talk about, so that's, you know, the DCNR grant requires community meetings. It's very, very comprehensive. So, so we'll have a lot of conversation, but we can still have that conversation, you know,
Yeah.
as well. So.
Ms. Mealy.
I'm mainly trying to get one more eye roll out of John Mackey down there.
It's all love, John.
Talk about the ballpark.
But no, the one thing that I would say is that as part of that process, obviously, we should be looking at what's exciting to me, I guess, for grant purposes is that things can function not only say as recreation, but also as flood control.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we have kind of a unique opportunity, especially with the state helping us out to do that recreation plan, to look at the holistic needs of the city. And it's not just what we need for rec, but it's also what can help us manage some of the environmental
Yep.
challenges that might be coming our way here.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I'm really excited about that process and excited to see that moving forward.
And
in
that is a key
2024.
component of it, that green infrastructure, how to manage the water.
Right, exactly. It's just, I mean, it can make for a really beautiful and livable community, and yet you're accomplishing these other ends too. So, yeah, anyway. Mhm.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Is there anything else under Department of Public Works that we missed? There's a other category. I don't think that we did, but I
Engineering.
just wanted to make sure we did.
Engineering.
Yeah, engineering's a separate, anyway,
Oh,
other than engineering, is there anything we missed in Public Works? Yeah, it will. Yeah, no, it's okay. Okay.
yeah, no, that's all, that's
Okay.
all my.
Engineer,
I told him I'd take care of this because it's pretty big this year. We're down 3.7%
Excuse me, real
in
quick.
engineering,
Scott, can you give us a page number, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, 26.
26,
26.
My bad.
27, 26.
Save me.
Yeah, so obviously, you know, we hired another engineer, and there's really not a whole lot to discuss. Down 3.7%.
Any comments or questions? So we've got a new city engineer.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about their background, kind of what they're gonna be involved in the next couple of years. I mean, I guess has the role changed at all since what we had with, or we're asking John Sander to do before he left?
No, so no, the role hasn't changed much for him, for Bill. He's actually, in the last 2 weeks, I think he's been here. He's kind of taken a bull by the horns,
Cool.
picked up, real well, Levy, the new walking path. He's, dealing with that. He's getting involved at the, like I'm in college and, the baseball fields. We got to look at some pedestrian crossings down on Elizabeth Street. He's picking up right where John left off, but he's taking a lot more and going after a lot more things. So he's doing real well. Yep.
And we did also meet, Bill and I met this week with the Federal Railroad Administration. Nothing major, the quiet zone, mainly over there around Brodart, where the railroad passes through the tracks. Just some minor stuff, like the paint
To get
was,
recertified.
yeah, the paint was worn to make sure that stays a quiet zone. The one sign had fallen down, just minor stuff, but we had that meeting as well, so. If anyone asks about or sees anything about a quiet zone, that was just an update. I think it's every 4.5 to 5 years. We just had that this week, so. That's all be handled basically by our streets and parks. They can fix the sign, they can put the paint
Yeah,
down.
that's all in-house work. Yep. We're getting together actually tomorrow. We got to go look at, I don't want to say the street. We got to go look at some streets for next year's paving list. Some CBD stuff, resurfacing of some courts and maybe some exercise equipment going in some places. We got to go get some ERs done, which is environmental reviews on these locations. And he's pretty much taking all that and talking with our CEDACOG rep. to
And the
handle that.
crossing, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're good.
The crossing there, you mentioned on Washington Boulevard, I think Councilwoman Mealy brought that up previously. We did talk to PennDOT and they said, go ahead and submit the highway occupancy permit. They were fine with that for the pedestrian things there on Washington Boulevard, since there already is a lot of traffic there going to football games and things, but with the baseball and all that, it's going to, of course, we know, add additional pedestrian and bicycle. So we're in that process as well. I don't think we've submitted the highway occupancy permit yet for
Not
Washington
yet. We
Boulevard.
have a meeting with like coming here and next week, I believe.
Yeah.
And then once we talk to them, get their ideas, get everything submitted, And then hopefully, you know, our intent is to try to get everything going by March, April, because obviously college baseball starts in April.
Yeah.
March, so.
So we did get the blessing from PennDOT though, so that's good. Go ahead.
And they're okay with like a lit. All right, all that.
So far, yeah, they said go ahead and submit it, but yeah,
Good. I mean.
tentatively, I mean, I don't want to speak for PennDOT, obviously,
It'd
but
be, because there are other places I've got in mind. No, I mean, but in all seriousness, it would be good to get people in Williamsport used to that sort of a crossing, because there are other places in the city that we could really use.
Yeah.
Great.
sorry if I just add one more to that point right there. The green overpass, when it comes on the Third Street there, we're looking at that as well, because that sort of dumps you like right into Third Street and
Yeah.
it's a little dangerous. So we are looking at that as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, that'll take some looking at. I was actually more specifically thinking about the other approach to Brandon Park across Confusion Corner there. Because I watched a bunch of school kids get marooned on one side of it, and then somebody tried to let them go, and then there was traffic coming from the other direction. It's just like dangerous as all hell. But yeah, I actually think that that's the reason nobody uses that pedestrian overpass, is because it's not as heavily used as it could be, is because of the access to it's so dangerous. So yeah, okay.
Any other comments or questions on the engineer, Mr. Biter?
Just the curiosity statement about the Graphius Run sensors. Have they been installed yet?
Yes, they have. Actually, I gotta get with the mayor. I gotta go out and show him. Yes, they've been installed. I'm still working with the company that owns has them. I have a login. I can see data coming in. I can see water temperature, barometric pressure, everything. These things do everything. Right now, I'm working with them to try to get it to notify us at high water. Thank God we haven't had any for me to actually test it out, but yes, they are in and working. Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Hour and a half.
Don't jinx it. We're not done yet.
Why don't we just go into the next? No, I'm just
It
kidding.
was your one question that threw it. there.
Thank you, Scott. All right, that gets us through the first item on our agenda for budget review. Item 2, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled meeting, voting meeting, is Thursday, December 7th, 7 p.m. right here, Trade and Transit 2. Our next budget meeting is in 2 days, Wednesday, November 15th, 7 p.m. right here. I'll take a motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you very much.